By. How are you? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
We have a real serious issue. Your cars are catching on fire after being submerged in water. Do you have anything to want to say about this problem?
Absolutely. I think in general, there's a lot of discussion of like this problem with that problem, and a lot of people are.
I see, but in Florida, they really are taking this seriously, and I wonder, do you have any timeline or any solution that you might have coming in the future?
Hopefully, we get there within a couple of years.
Hey guys, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So Teslas catch on fire. This is a real thing. And in fact, after Hurricane Ian, which has happened in Florida, a bunch of Teslas were emerged and essentially they catch on fire because there's a bunch of battery in these things. And the basic gist of it is that salt water and batteries don't mix well. This issue comes up and it's just something I hadn't thought about. And I'm sure there's other people that, are smart enough to probably figure this out ahead of time. I'm just thinking about, oh my God, and this is sort of part of living in the modern world is that when you got new technology, there's new considerations. Just think, for example, when we finally get those robots that Elon wants to put in our home, what if robots start, attacking your dog or something of that nature? That it could be a real thing. You never know what robots are going to do. And this is the same thing with batteries and Teslas. They do catch on fire. Now, this is a senator from Florida. He's writing, this is a letter to the basically Department of Transportation saying, hey, we got to take this stuff seriously. Let's see what he has to say. Again, this is about fires and electric vehicles with hurricane and water damage. Today, as hurricane recovery efforts continue across Florida, Senator Rick Scott sent letters to Department of Transportation, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and electric vehicle manufacturers urging action and requesting information regarding the safety of lithium batteries in EVs. Following the storm, there have been numerous reports of EVs catching fire after being submerged in Ian's floodwaters. These fires have proven to be extremely dangerous and last for prolonged periods, taking up to 6 hours to extinguish in many cases. This emerging threat has forced local fire departments to divert resources away from hurricane recovery and control the contain these dangerous fires. So basically, guys, what we're talking about is these fires are serious, and it takes such a long time to put these things out. You got to just be dumping a whole bunch of water in these things. I was looking at this. In fact, it was something like, here it is. They need 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water to extinguish a fire. That's 3 to 8 times more than a gas fire, and that's according to like Tesla's guidance on this stuff. And here's another gist of it is at least 4 Teslas caught fire in the past week. Salt water and lithium-ion batteries do not mix, as the salt corrodes and can damage sensitive components within the battery or surrounding architecture. Once the fire starts, it's exceedingly difficult to extinguish because of the extreme heat. And then there's the potential for battery packs to reignite even days after the initial fire. I saw this as well, which I think is crazy. Evidently, there was like a situation where a Tesla was in a junkyard, got in a car accident, and then was in a junkyard for like 3 weeks, and was sitting in water. It might have rained or whatever, and then ultimately caught fire 3 weeks after it was in the accident. So this is a serious thing. And in fact, I want to get your guys' opinion on this. Is this something that maybe they knew about, like the car manufacturers? And it's not just Tesla, right? To be fair, it's not just Tesla. Any kind of car with like tons and tons of batteries in it, how's it going to respond to water? I mean, I think you guys get the gist of it. Electricity and water just don't mix. You can see this. This is sort of like the picture of the firefighters, putting the water on the Tesla. They had to spend a bunch of time, and they had to like lift it up and spray underneath it, etc., because the whole thing is batteries. So this is real. And in fact, the fire marshal in Florida has also written a letter to essentially the NHTSA, that's the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. And also, too, guys, I've said this many, many, many times. I get it. I mean, I really get it. ARK Invest, Elon, they're going to tell you, full self-driving, robot driving is going to be the future. It's going to be so great. You're all going to be rich. Every Tesla channel tells you, oh, you're going to be so rich because of robot drivers. Just think about this. Just use your brain here. Think about it, please. Just imagine the first accident where a robot driver, harms someone, right? Kills someone, this kind of thing. How do you think the government's going to respond to that? And also, too, to get this through regulations is going to be really, really tough. I want to be very real on this. It's going to be tough because now we're talking about like just the actual use of these cars in storm damage. Politicians are already going to be like, hey, Is this safe? Should we even have these on the road? This kind of stuff. I'd love to hear for you guys to make the argument against it that, should we ignore this stuff? Should this be stuff we completely ignore? I think it's a very real and important thing. This is the fire marshal saying, and this is sort of a letter that he got back from the NHTSA. So let's see what they said. This is really interesting. The question was, they asked like different questions, and this was one of the ones I thought was interesting. Is there research or guidance as to the timeline to which corrosion may lead to fires? And this is what the government responded back. Lithium-ion vehicle battery fires have been observed both rapidly igniting and igniting several weeks after battery damage occurred. The timing of the fire initiation is specific to the battery design, chemistry, and damage to the battery pack. Test results specific to saltwater submersion show that salt bridges can form within the battery pack and provide a path for short circuit and self-heating. This can lead to fire ignition. And with other forms of battery degradation, the time period for this transition from self-heating to fire ignition can vary greatly. So, basically what we're talking about here is just that cars with a lot of batteries pose a lot of risks when it comes to water damage, especially seawater damage. Now, you could certainly make the case, well, Chris, cars aren't going to be, in seawater that often. It's just not a big deal. Okay, I get that argument, but I do think this is something we have to talk about because it's something that, honestly, I hadn't even thought about it. It wasn't even like on my mind. Although, to be fair, my wife said the first thing was like, this is a very similar thing in Seoul as well, is we had a bunch of flooding in Korea, in Seoul. If you guys saw the new footage, we talked about this before. And the joke my wife is saying is definitely do not buy a used car in the next 6 months. And I would say the same thing. Don't buy a used car from Florida in the next 6 months as well, because you're going to be getting a water damage car. But point being, though, I think electric vehicles and water damage is a real thing. And I think this is something that is going to be interesting to regulate. And again, I go back to the full self-driving thing. Just think how our government's going to react. How are different, either state government, city government, federal government, how are they going to react when we start to have, say, robot drivers on the road and you get accidents, this kind of stuff. So I think the government regulation is very real, and I want you guys to understand that there's lives at stake, right? I think this water damage thing is also a very serious thing. We're going to see how they just wrote this. October 13th is a date that Senator Scott wrote in, and frankly, I think this is just something that we should be talking about. Here's some of the questions that Senator Scott proposed. There's 6 of them. We'll just go through them. 1, are you considering recalling these vehicles until there's sufficient safety measures in place to prevent these fires? Wow, that's really serious. 2, what guidance has your company provided to consumers to communicate dangers related to vehicle impacted by saltwater flooding? That's a good point. This is a letter to companies like Tesla, like Ford, any company that makes these things. 3, what guidance has your company distributed to consumers and EV operators about precautions to prevent their EV from combusting and catching fire after saltwater flood? What safety precautions or protocols has your company developed and made publicly available to owners of EVs when inclement weather is approaching? And I think this is an important thing as well. He's saying, like, okay, there's a storm coming. Was there any sort of warnings from Tesla, or it's not just Tesla, any car company, that your car could catch on fire? And you guys understand this, like just imagine that you had a car and it caught on fire and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know this was even a danger. Because personally, Frank, I did something I didn't think about, and I think because America the way that it is, people may or may not sue over this thing because basically you lost your car. 5, what has your company provided to consumers to address and prevent this issue before EVs leave the factory? And 6, has your company worked with appropriate federal agencies to develop strategies and resources for local fire departments combating the EV fires? And again, this goes back to the issue to where the fire marshal is basically saying, when we have to deal with a fire regarding like a Tesla or any sort of EV vehicle, it drains our resources when they could be someone else, because it takes like 6 hours to put these fires out. So love to get your thoughts on this thing. I think this is a very interesting and important issue. And one, again, I think it also relates to when we get new technologies, we have new things that we need to regulate and think about. And just, for example, think about social media. Say 20, 30 years ago, we didn't really have rules on social media. And so, that's why the early iterations of social media like MySpace ended up being essentially failing, because we just didn't know like all the crazy things where you have like a bunch of people stalking a bunch of other people, that kind of stuff. The same way with EVs, fire risk is a real thing. So please share your thoughts. Love what you think about this. And do you think this will be a big issue going forward? Do you think, nah, it's no big deal, it's just water damage and it doesn't happen that often, and or whatever? I want to hear your thoughts on this one. Please share. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.